So, good evening. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sugar and Spice Talk Series. In this 2 hour evening, we will introduce three Asian presenters, with each speaking on a sexuality related topic for 15 minutes each. After their session, there will be a Q&A session. And then afterwards, there will be a fun activity for participants during this event. So at the end of the session, Martha will present a sex toy sponsored by Pink Lifestyle. So something about Pink Lifestyle. Pink Lifestyle offers a wide range of lingerie, personal massage equipment, lubricants, and aromatic body oils. They carry top brands around the world, from Japan, UK, and USA, each with their own distinctive culture and definition of design and innovation. Our mission, or their mission, is simply based on careful selection of products with the best quality at the most affordable prices. Ultimately, their aim is to bring couples closer together in the most direct manner. It is their goal to help them feel good about themselves and to draw their inner beauty. So Pink Lifestyle is a premier reseller of Lilo from Sweden, Womanizer, We Vibe and Fun Factory from Germany, Lovens from the USA, Tenga and Iroha from Japan. They're also a key distributor of the sophisticated Anemu lingerie brand with more than a few thousand designs to choose from. So for tonight's S&Sx session, our theme is violence. So before we start, I would like to share I would like to share some facts about our first speaker. So our first speaker will be talking about searching validation in all the wrong places. Um, Madame Rouge is the founder of Maison Rouge, a woman-focused space based in Bangkok, Thailand. She has tan skin, red shoulder-length hair with bangs, and she is currently wearing a black top. She is sporting minimal makeup, wearing winged eyeliner, and has bleached eyebrows. So let me give the floor now to Madame Rouge.
There's a saying that goes like this: men use love to get sex, and women use sex to get love. Well, why is that the case? There is some truth to it. As women, we want to know that we are pretty enough, that we are sexy enough, that we are fuckable. And one of the easiest ways to find that validation is through sex. If a man or woman finds you attractive enough to have sex with, then you must be sexy and worthy of love, right? Let me just start by saying this: there's nothing wrong with being sexy. Women are strong, beautiful, and full of sex appeal. The problem comes when we think our sexiness is the only thing that defines us. Women often seek external validation through men. I feel worthy because you are willing to have sex with me. This is not healthy because it means without outside validation, the person feels unworthy and undesirable. Today, I want to share some of my experience with you as a woman and talk about how our need to use sex as a way to feel wanted, desired, loved, or validated can have detrimental effects on our self worth, in hopes that my past experiences can lead to change that results in self love and ultimately healthy relationships. So, the big question is, why do we use sex as the ultimate validation? To put it more bluntly, why do we use the act of filling holes to feel whole? Spoiler alert, it doesn't work. Like many other addictions, sex may temporarily take away feelings of anxiety, loneliness, and even our insecurities. But that feeling doesn't last. It all stems from a low self esteem and a lack of self love. This often begins in childhood, whether it is due to being neglected, overly criticized, emotionally or sexually abused, especially if the trauma happened at a particularly vulnerable time. The earliest trauma I remember started when I was 12. I joined a new school in a new city. Like many other kids my age, I was going through an awkward phase, trying to figure out my own identity. I was relentlessly bullied and made fun of. Every single day, I would get pushed around or be the target of another stupid prank. But the physical abuse was nothing compared to the daily verbal assault, the name calling, the laughter, the jokes, the comments. You're so ugly. You're weird. You're disgusting. Kill yourself. Kill yourself. You should kill yourself. Even as a confident and happy child with loving parents who told me I was good enough, when every voice around you was telling you otherwise, day in and day out, you start to doubt yourself. You start to believe them. Maybe I am hideous and undesirable. Maybe I don't deserve to be loved. Maybe I should just kill myself. All I wanted was someone to tell me that I was beautiful. I wanted to feel wanted. And then he came into my life when I was at my most vulnerable. He preyed on all my insecurities. I was just 14 years old, and he was an adult man. To him, I was young, inexperienced, and malleable. To me, it was finally someone who wanted me, even if there were strict rules I had to follow. He told me I was very mature for my age, and I would do anything to prove to him that he was right. It was my first sexual experience with another human being. It taught me that sex is about pleasing the other person, that I'm just an object, that it's easier to just say yes and close my eyes because saying no never worked. And this became a pattern to actively seek out people who treat me like my abusers because they're the only people who made sense, the people I think I deserve. I could go back and blame the kids who bullied me years ago, or the man who groomed me and took advantage of me. But the fact is that I'm the only person who can break the cycle. What I needed was to learn how to say no and mean it. I needed to learn how to set boundaries and to love myself and find validation from within. I know what you're thinking. It's easier said than done. It's difficult to see the truth when you're living in the lie. No woman thought to themselves, when I grow up, I want to be in an abusive relationship. No one wants to believe that they are the victim. From an early age, women are taught to be people pleasing, accommodating, nurturing, and self sacrificial. Knowing how to compromise is fundamental in any healthy relationship. But where do we draw the line between the giving and the taking? For the longest time, I would jump from one toxic relationship to another. I would do everything I was told to do, hoping that if I never said no, they would see my worth and appreciate me. I would endure 100 awful experiences because all it took was that one moment where they would hold me, apologize, and make me feel special, for me to ignore all warning signs and be ready to take their abuse all over again. Over time, I became primed to expect manipulative, controlling, and abusive people to enter my life. People who just take and never give back. I ended up putting myself in degrading situations, in dangerous situations. I've slept with people I shouldn't have slept with, and people I didn't want to sleep with because that was how I valued myself. I thought my body was all I had of worth to offer. I wonder what would happen if I removed sex from the equation. Would those still same people still want to spend time with me? Would they still think I'm enough? People with extensive trauma tend to have great difficulty setting boundaries. When people betray your trust and cross your boundaries, especially at an early age, it's hard. It's hard to figure out how to put them back in place. But just because people took our power away in the past, it doesn't mean we can't get it back. It's still in there. We just need to look deep within and find it. And once we do, we need to hold on to it, cherish it, use it. Use that power to say no. Say no to things that don't enrich our lives. Say no to situations that make us uncomfortable. Say no to people who don't have our best interest at heart. The more you say no now, the easier it will be to say no when you really need to. But this vicious cycle of toxic behavior and even more toxic relationships can't end until we're ready to finally recognize it and admit it. Sex should not make us feel empty, dirty, or ashamed. We deserve better. We also deserve to forgive ourselves from the mistakes we've made in the past and learn from them. Only then will we be able to move forward and begin to heal. Most importantly, we must be willing to listen to the voices of reason and concern from our loved ones, no matter how hard to hear their critiques and advice may be. It took my best friend, someone I cared for and looked up to, telling me that she was disappointed in me, that she didn't recognize the person I was becoming, for me to finally stop and reflect on my crumbling life. We must be willing to take back control of our life, to push away our old, naive, adolescent attempts at finding social acceptance. The fear that everyone will suddenly not want to be around you, it's fine, because those are not the people you want around you anyway. Life is too short to be surrounded by people who don't appreciate you. Redirect your time and energy to making better interactions. Removing those people opens up room for real friends, those who want to spend time with you for your conversation, your fun energy, and your laughter. As people respond positively to traits that other than your sex, those traits will grow stronger. You'll then begin to invest in other parts of yourself beyond just looking sexy or being available for sex. And before you know it, suddenly your friend circle will be full of like minded, confident, and authentic people who view you as a peer. The road to self love is a journey. It takes time and it is ongoing. But trust me, it will happen. And when it does, it is so rewarding. At times, my past trauma still comes back to haunt me. The unhealthy way I viewed sex for so long still affects my current relationships to this day. But I have come such a long way since that child who desperately just wanted to be wanted. My new path started when I stopped using my sexuality as a defining characteristic. I went on a lot of first dates and very few second dates. I listened to my intuition and paid attention to red flags early on. I started to treat my body with respect and tuned into my desires. I also found that I had more mental capacity to focus on my own business ventures and my overall well being. I take that past with me on my new path, but I am aware of how my past experiences, good or bad, crafted the person I am today. Today, I'm happily married to a partner who supports me unconditionally and loves me for who I am, trauma, flaws, and all. I'm surrounded by family and friends who have celebrated with me through my highs and guided me through my lows. I now operate a business with the sole purpose of helping other women learn and heal and explore their own sexuality. I've learned to make my needs and my happiness a priority because our own happiness is nobody's responsibility but ourselves. And in the end, our relationship with ourselves is the most important one. I didn't always love myself, but at 35 years old, I can confidently say that I am beginning to fall in love with who I am and who I'm becoming. If I can go back in time and speak to my insecure teenage self or to anyone going through tough times, this is what I would say. Remember, nothing lasts forever. All the bad things that have happened to you or will happen to you, they will pass, and you are strong enough to overcome them. And all the good things and opportunities will also pass if you don't hang on to them, treasure them, and nurture them. You are beautiful. You are loved. You are resilient. And most of all, you are good enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Rouge, for that wonderful presentation. For any questions, you may ask them now. There's a comment. Dr. Martha said, "Thank you. That was very heartfelt."
Thanks, Dr. Martha, for this opportunity.
There's a question. How long did it take before you started overcoming the trauma of being taken advantage of?
To be honest, it wasn't like all in one go. It was a work in progress for a really long time. And like I said, it's still ongoing. Um, there'd be moments where I feel like I am stronger. I love myself. And I would date someone that treats me well. And then the next person comes along, treats me like shit, and back right it like that again. I go back into the same pattern. So I can't say I've completely overcome everything, but it took a while. And I think with age, hopefully wisdom also comes along. So I mean, I've been with my partner now for over 5 years. Um, and I guess mid 20s, starting around mid to late 20s was when I really started to only be with people that appreciate me.
So, another question is, how do you feel now? Are there still remnants of that trauma you've experienced? How are you
Um,
dealing with that trauma?
yes, there is for sure. Um, it creeps up on you sometimes. Uh, like all trauma, it's hard to just say, okay, I'm done with it. I'm done with it. You know, you can't pack it away. You can see therapists, but it does occasionally creep up on you. And little things, especially like being bullied, all of that, it lasts. It turns you. It's at that age, everything that happens to you becomes defining in who your personal, who you are as a person, your personality. So I think a lot of the lasting like negative effects, most of it has been I have overcome, but there still are some lingering ones. But the positive effect lasted a lot more. Now I am, people that do know me, I'm a very happy person. I'm a very confident person. I can talk about these difficult things because I have moved past them, and they are what made me who I am today. So I appreciate that I like went through that and was able to grow from it and to learn from it.
Okay, last question. Would you say there are moments of closure ever?
I mean, I would say I don't know if closure is the right word. For example, there are like people that that have bullied me, or people that I have been in that were I was in abusive relationships with. There's some of them that I still like, I'm not friends with them, but I would still like run into them, see them. And I guess the fact that no, there's no closure. That's the answer. I would say if maybe because I didn't head like face to face confront them, maybe because I see them and to them, you know, they were young or whatever. They don't even realize the impact that it does have on the other person. You know, so until they recognize it and come up to me and be like, "I'm sorry I did this to you," I don't think you'll get closure. But I have moved on. Am I trying? Like, I don't need it. I don't think so. I'm not trying to hunt down all my childhood bullies and like sit them down to be like, okay, apologize to me for this. If they don't recognize it, if they don't realize that that's what they were doing, then it's not my job either to teach them.
So no further questions now. So thank you so much for that heartfelt sharing, Madame Rouge.
Thank
So
you.
thank you so much. So for the next speaker, let me just spotlight him. There you go. Hello. Um, our next speaker will be talking about the shadow side of male rape. So I'm going to introduce him to you guys. Danish Hanbali is a men's mental health advocate, a sexual assault and drug abuse survivor who wishes to shed light and eliminate the stigma of mental issues in men. In our society, mental health is looked upon lightly, and mental health in men is shamed upon. He has dedicated himself to sharing his stories with full transparency, albeit the taboo topics, to inspire and hopefully help others. He feels that men should be able to seek help for mental health without feeling embarrassed, and he hopes to provide a platform for them to seek help without the fear of being judged. So Danish it has fair skin, has black double eyelid eyes, and an oblong face, and is currently donning a terracotta colored jacket with a brown hat. So I'll turn over the floor now to him.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction. First and foremost, I would like to thank Martha for giving me this opportunity to speak today and to speak about a topic which is, I regard as really close to my heart. And this month, it is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Every April, every year, it is time where like-minded people like me come out and advocate to share about this so-called taboo topic, and a topic that a lot of people they want to speak about, but they're afraid. And, you know, I am a sexual assault survivor myself, and I have been through it. Um, I have battled it for the past 14 years of my life. And today I'm going to talk about what exactly happened, um, the steps I took right after the assault, how I coped, and how I seek help. It has been indeed a intense, interesting, dark 14 years, past 14 years of my life. And right now, I feel that I do not want to be sworn to silence. And it is my time to share my story in hopes to inspire and help other people out there. So thank you, Martha, for giving me this opportunity and for actually holding this event. It's a truly amazing event. And yeah, I'm just gonna start to my story. So when I was 16, I was sexually assaulted by a man, which includes penetration. You know, at that age, I was still a teenager, and you know, I was in my last year of secondary school, also known as last year of high school, and I was manipulated and I was sexually assaulted twice from the same man. And you know, right after that assault happened, I took a life I wouldn't have taken otherwise. I fell into a dark phase of drug abuse. before the drug abuse, it was basically just alcohol, just getting by, just forgetting with alcohol. But then when I started to party and meet more people, that is when I found drugs. And it, to be honest, it was, to me at that point of time, at that period, it felt like drugs was the only thing that made me forget. It made me happy. And also, I have to really tell you that right after the assault, how I felt really lousy. I felt like I'm not worthy of being a man. And I felt really dirty. Back then when the sexual assault happened, I was a straight male, and I had a girlfriend. So right after that, I broke up with her. I fell into this dark hole, and this is really tough for me, because I remembered waking up every single day, having flashbacks, and the first question that popped to my head was, why me? Why did I let it happen? Why did I allow it to happen? Why didn't I defend myself? Why didn't I say no? In true fact, I did say no, but it happened anyways. When you're being sexually assaulted, a lot of people, they just don't know what to do. And that was what exactly I did. I did nothing. And you might be wondering, why didn't I tell anyone? Well, here's the thing. Many years ago, when we talk about rape, when we talk about sexual assault, we hear a lot of stories, a lot of news about female victims. This was 14 years ago. And us, me being a man, there was a stigma surrounding this whole topic. Like, people perceive us as individuals who are strong, individuals who should not let things like this happen to them, individuals who can defend themselves. But it did happen to me. And I was really embarrassed to reach out, or to even tell my family. And I took that life of drug abuse. And here's the thing, a study has been made, and stating that 1 out of 6 men have been sexually assaulted in the slightest way ever, by a form of molesting, or just by a form of unwanted touch. There are many men who are sworn in silence because of the stigma surrounding, because of the possible repercussions they feel they would cause. And I couldn't tell my family because I was embarrassed. And back then, there were no proper help channels for me to reach out to. A lot of the organizations that were offering help, they were targeted a lot to women. And yeah, I felt really lost. And, during the 13 years, trying to get through this, with drug abuse, this happened because obviously I was traumatized, and I needed something to numb my trauma. And during the 13 years, I actually tried to attempt suicide for at least 5 times. At first I was already trying to get over my sexual assault. And second, I had the drug abuse to think of, and my whole life was just going through a loop over and over again for the period of 13 years, until I actually, at the age of 27, I remembered, right, I wanted to drown myself at the beach, and something just told me, like, stop, you got to fix it, you got to do this, you got to fight again, fight. And I did. At the age of 27, I actually went to rehab, and it wasn't easy going to rehab as well, because in Singapore, the only rehabilitation center that we have, which is government run, it is located within the prison vicinity. And, I thought I was like really looking for help, but what happened next was I was treated like a criminal. I was in a third world prison for a year. I'm not going to talk about that part, but it was detrimental. Right after I got out, I fell into a darker place. I wanted to treat one thing at a time. I wanted to treat my drug abuse first, but then it just got worse after I got out from rehab. And yeah, I relapsed 10 times harder. I even tried to attempt suicide again because it was tiring. And so when I got out and when I relapsed hard, my family noticed and they asked me what exactly is wrong with me. And at the age of 28, that was where I told them. It was the first time in my life I have told anyone about my rape encounter. And true enough, it felt like there was a huge load that has been lifted off my shoulders. I remember that night, everyone, my mom, my brother, my dad, my sister, every one of us, we were crying and they were like, why didn't you tell us? And I told them, how would you react if I were to tell you? And then we started looking for alternative ways of getting to make me better. So rehabilitation failed. And then we found the Institute of Mental Health. In Singapore, it's known as it's known as IMH. And then again, when the Institute of Mental Health came out, I was pretty skeptical as well, because again, there was this stigma surrounding such institutes. A lot of people think that you belong to such institutes because you're crazy. So it took me a while for me to really agree to going there. And when I did, I have to tell you, it was amazing. I had help. I finally got help, the right help. They prescribed me with medication to treat my cognitive pattern. After many years of drug abuse, naturally, it alters your cognitive pattern, and it sure altered mine. I couldn't think right. I didn't know what was real and what was not. I didn't know what was right and wrong. At 175 meters, 1.75 meters, I was only weighing about 50 kgs. I was severely underweight. There were dark circles around my eyes. It was crazy, I didn't like looking at myself. So yeah, I got medication, and then they put me through a series of cognitive behavioral treatment, CBT. I got to meet a psychologist, and it was a one-to-one session, and that was where we kind of went to the root of the problem, which was my sexual assault. And at that time, I found another organization. They call themselves the SACC, the Sexual Assault Care Center here in Singapore, which is founded by Aware Singapore. So previously, Aware Singapore, they also target a lot of their programs for women, but recently they opened it up to men as well. And here's an interesting fact. In Singapore, before 2020, if a man were to sexual assault another man, it is inadmissible in court. That means you cannot be punished. It is almost impossible for you to go to trial because it wasn't in the penal code. But in 2020, they revised the penal code, and finally, men can report a rape. And at that point of time, everything was falling into place because I was like, oh my God, finally, I can speak up. I'm going to get better. I can speak up. And what I did, I actually went to the police and reported the perpetrator. And I remember that day clearly. I needed to meet so many officers. I was kept in a room for hours, just reliving my experience over and over again. But I knew it was for a good cause. And I knew that this is going to be one of the last few times in which I can really live through this and gain closure. And here is the thing. No matter the gender, rape is rape. And we have to normalize speaking about it. We have to talk about it. We have to share our experiences in hopes for us to become relevant to others who have been caught in this situation. A lot of times, a lot of people, they don't wish to report is because they don't think anyone would actually understand how it is. They don't think that it's they think that they're going to get in trouble. They think that people are going to look at them differently. I was in that dark place for 13 years. And finally, as soon as I shared it with someone, I felt better. And the reason why I'm advocating mental health in men and sexual assault in men is solely because of this reason. I do not wish for anyone to adapt a disruptive coping mechanism just like me. And as mentioned, men are much more susceptible in adapting such mechanisms. And personally, I've met so many, and they are still stuck in that place. And I would like to reemphasize that there are help channels now in Singapore. And finally, the penal code has been changed, and there is an outlet to share and to seek help. And Martha, again, this event is an amazing stepping stone, although we don't have as much viewers now, but rather little viewers on compared to none. We are still making a difference. And thank you so much for this, Martha. And, I can go on and on talking about my experience, but I think it's 15 minutes now. And yeah, if you wish to really find out more, you can follow my mental health men Instagram page. It is the_mental_health_ page on Instagram. And, you can just drop me a DM and I'll be more than happy to share you more. Thank you, Martha.
Thank you, Danish, for that. The floor is open now for questions. Mhm. So there's a question. What changed in you that made you want to speak out even with the risk of being shamed for it?
That's the thing. What changed in me is I do not wish to to allow others to shame me anymore, because this is for me. And a lot of people need to know that they're doing this for themselves. They're not doing this for anyone else. Although it's difficult, but this is an important milestone. We need to speak up, to heal ourselves. And in hopes creating a ripple effect while doing that and destroying the stigma that's surrounding this topic. Yeah.
Another question, for people who are going through the same thing, how do they reach out for help?
So as mentioned, in Singapore, when if anyone who's going through who has been sexually assaulted, the first step I would suggest is to go to the Sexual Assault Care Center. You can actually go to their website on sacc.org.sg, if I'm not wrong, and you can actually contact them via the WhatsApp chat. They've got a 24-hour help chat for you to go to and to really share your assault. If you've been sexually assaulted 24 hours prior, and if you feel like you need help, you can also contact them, and they will actually accompany you to the hospital to get a rape test kit. And yeah, so I have to really emphasize that the SICC and Aware Singapore takes this stand really seriously, and they have lots of friendly, helpful case managers in which they can help you along the way for the whole process, even inside the police rooms, while sharing your reliving your experience again. So they will definitely be there to help you, and yeah, I can safely endorse this because I went through the same thing.
Okay, so last question. Was he someone you knew and trusted? Would that have made a difference in how much the incident affects you?
He wasn't someone I was close to. To be honest, he was sort of like um, my boss when I was working. And at that young age, he manipulated me, and yeah, I was working as a teenage volunteer. Even when I was 16, I was already volunteering, and I wanted to do something for a good cause, but unfortunately, this happened. And I think it doesn't matter if it's someone we know or someone we don't. Rape is rape, as I mentioned. Sexual assault is sexual assault. It doesn't matter if you notice someone. It could be your family member. It could be your best friend. It could be anyone. It could be someone who's sitting beside you in the subway. So yeah, I think one thing we need to understand is that we cannot look at people, at the relationship we have with that person.
Okay, so that's all for the questions. So may we ask also if you can write down your Instagram handle in the chat, because some people are asking for it. So thank you, Danish, for sharing with us your vulnerability and your story. So moving on, let me pin the next presenter. There you go. So, our next speaker will be talking about Exotic Enemy, the impact of anti-AAPI violence on AAPI sexuality. So, Goddess Cecilia is a sexuality and pleasure educator who believes that even though most of the ocean remains unexplored, you are welcome to dive deep into the depths of your pleasures as a healthy and healing part of self care. Whether it's through pampering and pleasure products, or a vulva or body crafts activity, or educating in her finest shells, the mermaid goddess helps you relearn and reclaim your pleasure. So she is a Filipino woman with long dark hair, wearing a white t-shirt, long dangling earrings, and a mother of pearl necklace. I'll now turn over the floor to Goddess Cecilia.
Hi, everybody. Good evening, even though it's morning over here in the US. Thank you so much for hosting this event. Dr. Martha, thank you so much for having me. And I'll begin. So when I was 4 years old, my mother and I moved from the Philippines to Los Angeles, California to join my father. At the time of our big move, the Philippines was just coming out of martial law and the Marcos era. I know my parents wanted to make sure that I had more opportunities available to me, and the United States seemed to promise that American dream of prosperity to all those who landed on its shores. I found that I was still able to be surrounded by Philippine culture because of my large extended family and other Filipinos living in Los Angeles. But at school, I was teased for having an accent. I remember making the conscious decision to stop speaking Tagalog so that I could lose the accent faster. As a little kid, I didn't know that being teased for it was not okay, nor did I know back then that this simple choice was a way that that I internalized white supremacy, and that assimilation can only go so far if you don't share the same phenotype as the oppressors in society. Now, what does white supremacy mean? White skin is certainly not specific to people in the United States and Europe, but in this talk, when I talk about white supremacy, I'm referring specifically to the belief that the white race is inherently superior to other races and that white people should have control over people of other races, including but not limited to Black and Jewish peoples. Historically, I feel like we in the United States think of white supremacy as being part of large events like the slave trade or the Holocaust. But white supremacy is sneaky and not always overt. It could look like comparing one ethnic group's abilities to another, or incarcerating a higher rate of one group versus others, or making an assumption about the kind of job that a person has based on their ethnic group. It could look like someone wanting to only date someone within their racial or ethnic group to maintain the purity of their race, or it's stating that you would never date someone from a specific race or ethnic group because that's just not your type. I use these examples because at one point or another, some of these thoughts have definitely gone through my head. Specifically, when I was much younger, I used to say that I wasn't really attracted to other Asian folks. I would joke about it, saying that we would have like too many similarities. But I recognize and I know now that that is another way that I internalized white supremacy. My desire to fit into the United States culture meant that I would attempt to adopt a point of view that is promoted by mainstream, aka white, culture, placing my cultural identity at a lower level of importance and attractiveness. It meant subscribing and not questioning how society operated. I knew there were some things that were not acceptable, like being teased about the shape of my eyes over and over again by different people. But it wasn't until adulthood that I began to examine how I internalized white supremacy and to slowly work my way out of that way of thinking. My lived experience is only one small example of how assimilation into white supremacist culture might look like. There are countless examples, not just of immigrants, but even of children of immigrants who are born in this country. Because of the white supremacy built into the governing and culture of the United States, there will always be an assumption that anyone who isn't white isn't from here, that they didn't grow up in the same neighborhoods or attend the same schools or understand the same pop culture references. One glaring example of this is how so many people questioned the legitimacy of Barack Obama's presidency because they questioned where he was born. That same attitude extends to all other non-white people of color, including indigenous folks who were here long before white Europeans sailed over. White supremacy branches into colonialism when one group of people attempt to overtake another group for the purposes of political, social, and economic gain. Certainly, I could use examples of the systematic genocide committed against indigenous tribes here in the US. However, I'm certain that you could all point out one moment in history of your country and our culture where colonization took place. The attitudes against Black, Indigenous, and other people of color in the United States affect all of us. They have historically pit us against each other within the United States, but it also extends to how they treat other cultures around the world. For this talk, let me lay out the various and unfortunately not well publicized history of white supremacy directed at Asians in the United States. Anti-Asian hate truly began during the gold rush and the railroad era. Companies started hiring Asian immigrants because they could pay them far less than poor working class white folks and white European immigrants who were also looking for work. Because of this, Asian immigrants, and the majority of whom were from China, were used as a scapegoat for their lack of employment. In 1875, the US wrote its first ever federal law that restricted immigration, and it was directed at Asian immigrants. Specifically, it was directed at Asian women. The Page Act basically stated that Chinese, Japanese, or any, quote, Oriental women were prohibited from entering the country because they may be engaging in undesirable behavior, namely sex work. Think about that for a second. Not only did they see Asian immigrants as a threat for their jobs, but they also saw them as a sexual threat. They claimed that the law was to prevent sex work, but what it actually did was prevent Asian men from bringing their families or from finding partners. Between the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act and World War II, there were many instances of anti-Asian hate and discrimination, some of which included rioting against specific groups of Asian folks. For example, there were the 1907 Bellingham riots in Washington state, which targeted South Asians, and the Watsonville riots in 1930 in California, which targeted Filipinos. In the late 1960s, the concept of the model minority began to surface. The model minority myth was framed positively by highlighting Asian and Jewish work ethic and the importance placed on education as a reason for their relative successes. But what it was really saying was that Latino and Black folks did not have the same worth ethic or care about education. It also lumped everyone into a single category of Asian, not recognizing that there were variations in socioeconomic status between the various ethnic groups. This also ignored the bias that people have, which is perpetuated in how different ethnic groups are portrayed in the media and how their family members might have talked about them in the past. This is why when Trump started referring to COVID-19 as a China virus or Kung flu, it wasn't a surprise to me that anti-Asian hate crimes began to increase in frequency and violence. To have a president utilize racial stereotypes in this manner, it seemed to put the focus on the group of people and not the virus itself. It gave his followers permission to be open about any stereotypes or biases about Asian folks that they already believed. People became very comfortable with blaming the pandemic on anyone who looked Asian, and unfortunately, it resulted in more than 3,700 incidents being reported from March 2020 to February 2021 on stopaapihate.org. The problem is that we know that these numbers are probably lower than what's realistically happening. People are underreporting or they don't feel like it's worth reporting. We have seen that the police and justice systems here don't often do enough after an incident that has been reported. And how are you supposed to report someone yelling a racial slur in their moving vehicle? It's a systematic issue that affects the everyday lives of Black, Indigenous, Latino, Asian, and Pacific Islanders living in the United States, whether they realize it or not. This isn't to take away from those of us who have worked hard and established themselves in this country. But because of the color of our skin or the texture of our hair or the slant of our eyes, the larger society will continue to weaponize our ethnicity to benefit white supremacy. So now that I've taken the time to detail the larger examples of anti-Asian sentiments in the United States, let me talk about how this affects our sexuality. Now, historically, many of the restrictions in immigration directly affected the sexuality of Asian immigrants. By forbidding the immigration of Chinese women, for example, Chinese men were not often going to find a partner or were limited in how often they could see their families back home. The Page Act also highlighted the sexuality factor as well. By associating sex work with Asian women, they created an image of Asian women being promiscuous and carrying sexually transmitted infections. There were also anti-miscegenation laws that were already in existence, which further barred any non-white person from having a relationship or marrying a white person. In fact, part of the reason the Watsonville riots happened was because Filipino bachelors were hosting dance hall events and white women were attending. White men were so angry at this that they proceeded to attack Filipinos and burn down their establishments. In the most recent large-scale attack against Asian folks, a shooter drove to 3 different massage and spa locations that were owned or staffed by Asians. He said he wanted to, quote, eliminate a temptation. Why were these specific people and these specific spas a temptation? As of now, there's still no proof that anything sexual was actually occurring at these locations, yet they were a source of his supposed sexual temptation. And if there was something sexual occurring, the fact that he believed that the staff and patrons were expendable shows how much value he really placed on their lives. When this occurred, there was a massive grieving throughout the United States among the Asian and Pacific Islander community. Many of the women already knew what it was like to be reduced to a sex object because of our ethnicities. As a Filipina, I've been told about people being a US soldier stationed in the Philippines and how Filipino women were really good at sex. Cis men in the United States constantly want to show how much they know about our cultures by trying to lecture us about our customs, cuisines, martial arts, and languages. The amount of times some random man has tried to say maganda or beautiful to me and other Filipino women I know in order to impress us is countless. Knowing that we can easily be reduced to a sexual plaything is exhausting. We cannot walk the streets without the stereotype potentially following us, literally, as we're just trying to do simple things like shop or for food or ride public transportation. If we do express our sexual selves, it's looked at as an opportunity to support a stereotype or to take advantage of us. Humans have some basic needs to be fed, housed, clothed. All of it is so that we can feel safe. Safe in our bodies, safe around the people we interact with, and definitely safe with lovers. If we don't feel safe, or if we're always at a heightened level of alertness, or even if we choose to shrink ourselves to minimize how much space we take up in the world, all of that affects our sexuality and definitely affects how we feel pleasure. We may question whether we're engaging in certain sexual acts because we want to or because it's what we've been told to enjoy. We might also never question this and might end up missing out on a whole world of potential pleasure. There isn't really one way that it affects all of the Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, especially since there's so much variation in the way we were raised and our individual cultures. Sure, sex can also be a way to relieve stress, and some folks will use it that way. But if the stress outweighs the pleasure, then it's quite possible that it isn't really that pleasurable. Also, the potential for a whole host of other issues come up, like having difficulty reaching orgasm. I say this often when I do pleasure workshops. There's a direct line from our brains to our buttholes. We've watched our elders, our neighbors, our community members be attacked time and time again, and some did not survive those attacks. Because of all that's happening, there's been a collective grieving that's been happening on top of fear and worry for ourselves and our loved ones. It continues to rob us of the time we could be feeling joy and pleasure. So I try to remind my clients and my followers of the fact that our joy and pleasure is a way that we can change the narrative. We deserve to claim our spaces and live as full human beings, no matter how white supremacy tries to take that away. The fight continues, of course, until we are recognized as full citizens and full human beings. In addition to how our cultures influence our presence, the fight has to continue. In the meantime, making room for extra pleasure can only make us more whole with ourselves. Now, where do we go from here? I recognize that I'm speaking to you from a particular lens of being a 1.5 Filipino immigrant raised in the United States. But I do believe that we could all take steps forward together as people within our homelands and a diaspora. 1, examine our biases and colonized mentality. This is a toughie. I recognize that. I think that history being what it is, we all could do our own individual work of recognizing whether we carry any biases within us. Perhaps we learned it from our parents, grandparents, or media, or societal norms. What are our initial thoughts about different groups of people, people with different abilities, people in different socioeconomic statuses, people with different body types? Recognizing that our biases may or may not, or what they may or may not be, is a step towards then examining how colonization has impacted us. And that's honestly a whole different conversation for another time. 2, recognize that white supremacy needs to be abolished, and it affects not just the white folks in the United States, but all of the people of the world. White supremacy doesn't want any of us to survive, much less feel joy and pleasure. But we deserve to thrive. We deserve to have all the pleasure and all the orgasms we want. We deserve to have families if we wanted, to have children and descendants grow up in a world where we wouldn't have to fear for their survival. Lastly, part of abolishing white supremacy is abolishing the belief that we're just supposed to get over any trauma we may have experienced. As we have learned from our previous presenters, trauma affects so much of our lives, even though it doesn't have to define us. Understand that trauma and healing are different for everyone, and sexuality and pleasure can be affected by trauma and can also be part of the healing. At the end of the day, our sexuality and our pleasure are ours. They're part of who we are, and we carry them with us even when we're not always fully aware of it. I know that I and other Asian American and Pacific Islanders will continue to fight towards justice and equity and the abolition of white supremacy. And you better believe that we're going to continue living our full lives, our full sexual lives, while we're doing it. Thank you all.
Thank you for that sharing, Goddess Cecilia. So the floor is now open for questions. So there is a question. How is the situation now there in the US with all the anti-Asian hate crimes? How are you navigating through that as an Asian woman?
Well, unfortunately, there are things happening still every day. They're not always in the news, unfortunately, unless someone happens to pick it up on social media. And sometimes it's hard to know whether or not it's like directed specifically at them because they're Asian, or just because it just so happens that, it's like a coincidence that they're Asian. But I'm hoping that people are paying attention, and that I think that there's a lot of groups out there who are trying to be really vocal and trying to provide education, trying to help people be better bystanders too, because a lot of what we've seen is that when someone gets attacked, some people don't feel like they can do anything. And we need our other community members who aren't Asian to be able to step up and help us out if we need it. So there's a lot of that. And it is tough. It's a weird time, because I feel like especially because of the model minority myth, people who are Asian have kind of gotten very comfortable in kind of being under the radar. Like, we're kind of like, okay, like, I'm just going to do my thing. I'm just going to like move along my life. And all of a sudden it's like, we're very visible. And it's weird because we've been invisible our whole lives. And to suddenly be so visible is frightening. And my hope is that it'll help us be better allies to other people of color. But that's a whole other issue that's happening here, unfortunately, is that they're playing into, there's a lot of people who are playing into, the idea that, oh, well, it's other people of color too who are harming us, which is true, but it doesn't mean that they aren't acting within the realm of white supremacy, right? Sorry, that was a long answer for all of that.
So second question, is there a difference between having a preference and yellow fever?
Oh God. So, oh God, yellow fever. Yes, there is, right? Like, we can have preferences, like, totally. You can prefer someone who might be like a specific height, who might, you know, look a certain way. You might have a specific preference towards a specific gender, but yellow fever is fetishization because it hones in on specifically a specific group of people, right? And it only sees them for that specific sexual reason. And to have a preference doesn't mean that, like, all of a sudden you're suddenly attracted to someone who's short and you're like, oh God, like, well, I can't be attracted to them because they're not tall, and so I'm not going to have any relationship with them. Like, that's discrimination. Right? It to have a preference is like, okay, you might like certain things, but it doesn't mean that you only exclusively like that thing, or you would never consider other people, right? So yellow fever is very, like, directed, very pointed, and it fetishizes the people instead of looking at the individual.
So two more questions. Second to the last would be: would you say the pandemic made it worse?
Yes. And I think that we've learned a lot from the Black Lives Matter movement because people have started using their resources to talk more about it. I don't think that I think that yes, there's the spike, the increase is real. There's definitely more, but I think it's always been happening. We just didn't have the technology before to document it or the places to report it, right? Like I said in my presentation, how, like if someone yelled at me from a moving vehicle, how am I going to report that to the police? What are they going to do about it? You know, so most people don't do anything because what is anyone going to do about it? You know what I mean? Um, yeah. So yes, and it was already pretty bad.
So last question: how can people outside of the US do anything about Asian hate crime, and what to do about people who choose not to care because they're not in the US?
That's tough. I can't tell anyone to like I can't convince anyone of of caring, right? Like I don't want to come at you and being like, okay, this is my official answer. But if you're someone who cares about other people, if you're someone that cares about the world, um I think that I mean, I think it's just as important as say like climate change, right? Like all of it affects all of us at the end of the day, even if you don't necessarily feel it right away. I mean, people feel that way already here in the US, right? Like if I'm in this tiny corner where no one is bothering me, then I'm not going to do anything about it. But that doesn't help anybody, right? Like, so if you're in your tiny corner just being like, well, it's just me and I'm not going to do anything, there are things that you can do. You can highlight specific voices of Asian American people who are doing the work already to educate people, to spread awareness. I think that's one small way that you can help. But it's important because I think a lot of the times as I said before, we've been so used to being so invisible that any sort of boost can only benefit us. So if other people around the world are boosting what we're doing and what we're saying, then that's one step. I'm sure there's more that we could do, but I think for now, small steps are the best.
Okay, no more questions from the people here. So thank you, Goddess Cecilia, for sharing with us your experiences and your thoughts about anti-Asian hate crimes. So for now, I'm going to turn over the floor to Dr. Martha.
Mm, moment. Oh, okay. Thank you for all the wonder. I want to thank all our presenters, Madam Rouge, Danish, and Goddess Cecilia for being here. It was really very heartfelt and so important that we have these conversations. And with your consent, the recordings will be put on YouTube. And we will do different versions of it. So we will have the long version, like the whole session, and then we will have the per presentation version as well. So people can zoom into the session that they want to watch. So I really like how Madam Rouge, you were talking about your personal journey, and I think a lot of people relate with you. And I really like Danish, your eye contact with the screen and how it was very heartfelt. And for Goddess Cecilia, I really love how warm you come across and how you really have your finger on everything that's happening. You give us a very good summary for those of us who are outside of the US. So I especially like your answer to my question, which is, that for any one of us who care, we can all do something. We can call out injustice, and we can all get ourselves more educated so that we can do something in our communities. So we're going to coordinate this, but in your recording, we will also want to post some resources that people can go and look up. Like maybe they can provide some funding, or they can help with the reporting, or they can go somewhere to get more education. And of course, for each of you, your social media links will be there as well. So yeah, so we are more than 1 hour into our evening. So we kind of brave through everything. So I was wondering how everybody is feeling. How are you feeling?
Good, good. It's like a heavy subjects. You're starting off this series with a bang, but it's got. I think everyone spoke about things that are like all revolving around the same kind of topic, but they're very, very different. But I'm still sure like each of us could relate to also each of us. I'm sure we've all also probably been through abusive relationship, probably had been sexually assaulted, and we're all Asian and have faced racism as well. So it was actually really good combination. I think I learned a lot as well. Thank you, Dr. Martha.
How is everyone feeling? Anybody else would like to share? Those of you who are attending, you can private message me if you prefer. And you can also choose to unmute yourself if you like. Just want to do a temperature check on the room. Oh, okay, somebody message. Doing good, just tired from work, haha. But listening and tuning into this is very wonderful. Learning more about these things in a platform like this is very refreshing and lovely. A new perspective is always good. Okay, so I really like to thank our presenters for being here. And since you are here, if you are okay, would like to put all of us in breakout room to kind of have a chance to speak with the presenters to decompress a little bit. Okay, so Kay is sharing, oh, sorry, I shouldn't mention the name. Okay, said same, kind of intense, but represented so well. Yeah, so, okay, Kay says, haha, it's okay to mention the name Kay. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so if you are okay, for me to put you in breakout rooms to have a chance to talk with different people who are here. Just a little time to process like what you've heard, what you think. Oh my God. Is that okay? Okay, somebody says have to leave soon. Okay, just try anyway, okay? So we do this for maybe about 10-15 minutes, and then we'll come back, and then we'll end with this sex toy sharing. Yeah, so please go to your room, or if you want, you can leave. I think Goddess Cecilia, maybe some people have left. Okay, let me just pause the recording for now. So I'm going to resume recording. Thank you everybody for staying through to the end. We have about 13 more minutes. So for this last segment, now that we've done a bit of an icebreaker and processing and sharing and networking, so going to in credit to our sponsor, Pink Lifestyle. Actually, this was an idea by our committee member, Yuwen. It said that previous Sugar and Spice, we had a sex toy sharing session, and there was just one toy after another, and it was very overwhelming. So the suggestion was for every Sugar and Spice talks, we just introduce one sex toy, just one, so that along the way, people are getting their sexuality education a little bit at a time. Okay, so the toy that I'm going to introduce today was only launched recently, and I'm very familiar with it because I promote it a lot in the shop. I'm working part-time in Pink Lifestyle, and Pink Lifestyle is our sponsor. And the toy is called Levance. So I had difficulties pronouncing the brand. Recently, one of the customers also did. Love Sense also can, but it's actually Levance. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So Levance, a sex talk for every, sex tech for every bedroom. And this is last 3. So last 3 meaning this has gone through 3 versions, and it's a Bluetooth remote control G-Spot vibrator. So I have already charged it. This is actually a new piece. So for sex shops, once you come into contact with the toy, you touch it, then you can't sell it anymore. Essentially, it's going to be a showroom piece after today. So it comes with a magnetic charger. So I already charged it and tested it earlier today. So magnetic charging, and you just do this, and then it will just charge to your USB cable, and this is the product. Okay, so what happens? It goes into the vagina, and this part will be on the clitoris. And I have had people who don't have a vagina ask me, can they use this for the anus? Levance does have other products that is specifically for the anus and also for the prostate. And there have been people who actually, I know, buy this for the anus. I believe that sex toys can be used in whatever purpose that we would like. It's all about pleasure. So personally, I don't really prescribe to like, you must use it in a certain way. Because of this end and because of the way it is, I believe that it's not going to get, sucked into the anus. So I still think it's a possibility for people to use it in whatever way that they would like. So the unique thing about this is not just a vibrator. There's a term, right? They call it sex tech. It also comes with a pouch and instructions, which I will not really go into. But anyway, I just see if it makes sense to show you. So yes, essentially you just press the one button that they have on the toy, and you can control it with different kinds of rhythms. And it comes with a user manual as well, in different languages. Okay, so because I am not a tech person, I was very intimidated, and I do get very intimidated whenever I come across toys that requires technologies. So I'll just show you the difference before I go and try to do the pairing. This is version 3 and this is version 2. So if I put them alongside each other, you can see the tail, something's going on with the tail. So the tail with version 2 is a lot more looser. And at one time I was mocking the tail and I was like, I don't know what this tail does. Essentially the tail part is the antenna, which allows for the pairing. And this actually is flexible. It adjusts with any body. So really the tail being more tight, I guess it just creates a better kind of sensation of the holding feeling. And of course, the most important part is the bulbs. With 2, it is 3 is actually more pronounced than 2. 2 is a lot flatter and 3 is more pronounced. The battery is longer, and because 3 is magnetic charging and 2 is not. 2 is still using the plug. So whenever you see a toy that you see that is charged by using a pin kind of charging, we are concerned about this area being a gateway of bacteria, and also it is not completely waterproof, whereas this toy is. So these are some of the upgrades that they have done to version 3. So I just show you the back of the box. It says it's quiet, body safe, because it's made of high-grade silicone. It has strong vibrations, waterproof, and 1-year warranty. So what is the unique selling point about the toy? Actually, is the Bluetooth. And not only is it Bluetooth, it is actually also available via internet. So what this means is you can be across the world. A lot of people, Bluetooth is proximity, but with across the world, you actually log in using the internet. So I have downloaded the Levance app, and so if, okay, let's say I remove this completely, I delete Levance. Okay, so previously I had downloaded the other products that Levance has, Fairy, Harsh, Domi, and anyway, I can't pronounce the name. So now I want to insert toy. So it says the app is trying to turn on the Bluetooth. So you have to turn on your Bluetooth in order to try to pair them. Okay, so let me turn on my Bluetooth. Actually, I'm a bit nervous. Okay, so add toy allows Bluetooth. So it says turning on Bluetooth. And so now it's looking for the toy. I just turn it on. And I feel a vibration. So I just keep holding on to this. And it says searching for toy. See? Hey, hey. So now it's paired. So I click done. And I go over to the main screen. So this is the main screen. And you go to remote, for instance, and immediately the toy will vibrate accordingly. You can adjust it in whatever way you want. And of course, you don't want to adjust it manually. So maybe you can go and choose the certain patterns that they already have assigned for you. So you can, once you have chosen the pattern, it just goes on and on. You don't have to manually do it. And then you can adjust. You want to times 4 or times 2, it's up to you. And it actually also syncs with sound and with music. So like now I'm talking and then it's actually vibrating according to my voice. And then you go to music and then you can play the music and it will start vibrating with the music. It's very fun. And you know what is my favorite? My favorite is, okay, turn off the music. My favorite is the alarm clock. You can put this in your vagina or anus and set the alarm. So it will wake you up during your meeting, you know, like those meetings that you cannot get out of, like at 5:30 or like 8:59, you have to end the session and it's in your vagina or anus. And then it's like telling you, okay, so then you just discreetly excuse yourself from the meeting. So that's what's so amazing about this. It's really, really fun. The moment I say alarm clock, everybody likes to, you know, like laughs. So that's Levance. And there are other Bluetooth toys. I have experienced some. I will not mention the brand. If you want to know the brand, private message me. Some of them very, very, very difficult to pair. So for somebody who is a bit unlucky when it comes to tech, you know, even I can do it. So you can do it. Okay, so I'm going to give you the link for last 3 and you can read more about it. And I always say this when people come to the sex shop, it's actually a Singapore company. It's a Singapore company. It's world famous and it's a Singapore company. So yes, I am proud. I am proud. We are going somewhere when it comes to making money everywhere around the world, especially when it comes to toys. Okay, so yes, that was my presentation about the one toy that we want to show and share with you today. Okay, so just to wrap up everything, this is the link for the product. And you can, if you buy anything from our sponsor, Pink Lifestyle, you will get 15% off if you key in this code, love sugar spice. yeah, so the discount code doesn't expire, and that's just our way of thanking our sponsor. So yeah, once again, I want to thank everybody for being here, the presenters especially for what you have done, preparing, rehearsing, drafting. I have been in communication with you, so I know that it has been a lot of work. And I know that you agreed because you believe in what we are trying to achieve collectively. And I hope that through this platform, you will get more opportunities to showcase yourself and your work. And also, you have made some friends tonight. So thank you so much. So does anybody have any last words you'd like to add or share? You can unmute yourself or private message me.
Thank you, Dr. Martha.
Oh, thank you.
Looking forward to the next one.
Oh, yeah, it was a bit scary because this is our first one. I think it went well, like I felt like having the breakout room and just giving people a chance to get to know one another. I think it's very important. It's very important because we do buy into the story that we are isolated and we are not.
And I have followed Danish's Instagram. So
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Followed you guys too. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Martha. And thank you, everybody. It's been a nice evening.
Yeah, and thank you so much for staying till the end. Thank you. Okay, I'm
Yeah,
going to
thank
stop
you
the
all so
recording.
much.
Thank you. Thank you, Goddess Cecilia. Thank you, Danish. Thank you, Madam Rouge. And thank you, Nudista, for being the host. We do have our committee members working at the back end. Some of them couldn't make it today, but really, this is only possible because everybody contributed to it. So thank you. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.